One thing that's nice when we're working with cutout characters in animation is setting up the artwork so that we can hide joints on similar colored elements like at elbows and wrists and things like that. So what we're going to look at is how we can accomplish that in Harmony using the Autopatch node. And we'll first look at a direct and simple way of doing it, and then we will look at a little more complex method that gives us ultimately a better node setup and more functional Autopatch. But it's nice sometimes just to start with the basic and get that working. So I've taken the liberty of creating the line art for a simple character. If I turn off the drawing, we can see it a little bit more clearly. So we have sleeves, upper arms, lower arms, hands, and a shirt or body. So we can just leave that on. It kind of shows us where a head might be. We're not going to worry about rigging the whole character yet. We're just going to start out with how to set up the joints and the auto patches. But before we can get into our node view and start cleaning that up and working with it, what we do want to do is work on the artwork. To do that, we need to go to our preferences, which if you're on Windows, preferences are under Edit. If you're on Mac, it's under the Harmony drop-down menu. Then we go into our preferences. And now we need to go over to the Advanced tab. And in the Advanced tab, there's an option where it says Support Overlay and Underlay Arts. And we want to choose that. Now when I go back, I will see that now I don't just have line and color art layers, but I also have outline or overlay and underlay as well. And we won't be using underlay in this particular activity, but we will be using the overlay as we build a more complex version of the Autopatch. But in the beginning, we'll just start out and create a simple structure for working with the Autopatch. But what Autopatch requires is we need to separate the fill. So if I have a layer and it's filled, I need to have my fill on my color layer and my line art on my line layer, because then it's able to calculate where there's the overlap in the line art that's not part of the fill color and is able to hide that joint so that we don't end up having something where we see that line at the elbow, which is just kind of ugly. Now we could erase the lines, but it limits how far or how much we can move our characters, so we're not going to want to do that. So working with this, there's a couple of things that we could do. It can be when we're drawing, if we know that we make perfect lines every time, inside our drawing we do have the ability to automatically start creating this, where we have automatically create color art from it. So I'm just going to make a throwaway layer here. I'll just call this junk. And on this junk layer, if I check that box, and now if I draw with something, I've created that box. Now if I switch over to my drawing view, it shows me there it is. And this eyeball up here on my different art layers will show me all the layers at the same time, or if I check that off, now if I look at my color art, we'll see that it transferred the line to it. Now if I turn that switch off, let's go back to our line art, and now I do another mark here. If I go here, we'll see that there is no color art. Now we use the color art so that we can fill it with something separate, so that if we look at it, we can see what's there. Now there is a keyboard shortcut to see the paths, the points and the paths that we are drawing, and that is the letter K on the keyboard, turns it on and off. So we can toggle off the visibility of that. So that's a useful keyboard shortcut to remember, is the letter K to see our strokes, or the actual path of it. So I have my line art here, and if I don't select that while I'm drawing, and honestly, most of the time we don't want that because when we're drawing, we may end up, we draw something and then we kind of clean it up a little bit, and then we get it, and then we might have to go in and erase something on it. And when we start doing this, by the time we get into the color art, what we have there is just, it's messed up and we don't want it. But what we can do is select it. Remember, when we're using our select, we can marquee around it, or I can just go across and select whatever I want. So I can now select that. And up in my toolbar for the drawing window, we'll see that there's an option to create color art from line art. Go back into camera, we'll see that option exists there as well. So we don't have to switch to the drawing view. The advantage of the drawing view is it isolates what we're working on, so we know indeed what we see is actually there. So again, if I turn off the eyeball so I can only see the line art, I go into the color art, we don't have that path there. Now if we go back to the line art, select this, and we click that button, the line with the little arrows pointing down, and it's create color art from line art, boom. We didn't see anything happen until we go to the color art. Well, let me try again. Now we go to the color art. Oh, it's there. Oh, because I had turned off strokes, that's why. So it was there. Okay, so now if we want to fill it, grab the paint bucket and, oh, I thought I changed colors, but we'll try again. Okay, now it's filled. Go back to our camera view, we can see that those shapes are there. Hit K, that gets rid of the strokes while we're working. So we have the two separated. So what Autopatch is going to allow us to do is to create those seamless joints at elbows, wrists, knees, ankles, shoulders. I mean, anywhere we're trying to create that bend between two parts. Work with it. All right, so this is a junk layer. I might just leave that in case I need to make more junk later on. So what I want to do is I want to go to all of my layers and create color art from the line art. So notice if I'm on the color art layer here and now I try and select something, we'll see it says, hey, look, you can't select anything. Nothing's there. Go to the line art layer. Oh, and I'm on the layer that's turned off, so that's really not going to work. But now if I go to the sleeve, go to the color art, try and select, nothing is selecting. So the right sleeve, that should be right there. Nothing is selecting on the color art. Go to the line art, and now that selects the sleeve. You'll notice I didn't add it back to the sleeve. We're going to look at doing that as we create the more complex arm. So we have the back of the sleeve. We can work with that. Creates a little bit of kind of perspective of the arm bend. It's kind of cool. And with that selected on my line art, because if I go to the color art, won't select, so go to the line art, I can now select it and I can click create color art. Well, because I have a bunch of layers, I can do it one layer at a time. I can also now shift select all of those layers so they're all active. We can see we have the shirt through the right sleeve, so that's every layer I'm working with. We can see the lines are all there. We're on the line. So I will click the button, create color art from line art. And now, if I switch to the color art and hit K, we can see, yep, it's there. So what I want to do is switch over to my paint bucket and we'll just go through. I'm going to fill some shirt colors. And I like to use, not keep changing my color, so I'll go and choose all the different layers as I am working with the same color. So left hand is not wanting to fill, so we're going to have to go back and look at that. And all right, oh, that's right, the hand's not filling, I forgot, because it's not complete. If we look closely here, we'll see that the line isn't complete on the hand, and we'll go back and work on that in a moment. And so we have those selected. Now we have to finish out the hand. So if we go to the right hand here, and what I want to do is I'm just going to switch over to Lightbox so I can isolate that layer a little bit more. Let's zoom in, take a look at what's going on. So when we're working with hands, it's generally easier not to auto patch at the hand for the wrist, because for the hands we often are doing drawing substitution. So we could build an auto patch and do it the same as we do for the rest of the arm, but often we want the little intrusions at the wrist joint. So most of the time we don't use an auto patch on the hand, but you could, because the method would be the same. So if I close that out and added in all the layers that I need for auto patch, it would work. But if we use our stroke tool, this allows us to draw that invisible stroke. So on the right hand, I'm just going to start here and complete that. And now it gives me a message and it says the stroke you've drawn won't be visible unless I choose show strokes. I'll say OK. And normally I click this off, but for videos I leave that on so we always have that reminder of what's going on, so you don't freak out if you get a warning message. Now if I hit K, we can see that that stroke is there. Now we can turn it back off, go back to fill with paint, and now it filled it perfectly. You can see how the stroke went there. Now one thing to notice when we're working with Autopatch is it fills along the stroke. Our lines are centered. So if I hit K, we can see how that line is centered here. It's not inside or outside of that line, it's centered, and then the color art goes to the middle of it. And this is part of why we will have to structure things that we do using Autopatch. Now let's jump over to the other hand and finish that one. So this is my left hand, and we will go back to stroke, zoom in a little bit, and now I'll just complete that line, go back to paint, and I must have, okay, we got, looks like, okay, we got a few gaps there that are not wanting to allow it to fill, so it's not entirely closed with it. And if I only look at the color art in my drawing, this can be even more useful to try and find out where we might have some breakdowns for filling. So that's closed there. So it looks like we should be relatively closed. All right, so it's probably the gaps there that were causing our problems. So now we have our layers filled and situated. The next thing that we want to do on this is to start working on our rigging. And to do that, we have to switch into our node view so that we can configure everything. If I go into my node view, you can see that the layers are here. As we set this up, we're probably going to need a little bit more space. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit just so I can see what's there. I don't really need to see my layers. What I really care about is this. But I'm leaving this little kind of thumbnail view there to work with, just so I can see what's happening as I work on it. Hit K to get rid of the strokes, so it's a little bit cleaner. So I find what's useful is first to spread everything out. So I spread that out. And now I'm going to just pull this down so I have a little more room to work. Drawing is the original sketch that includes the head, which we don't care about. Junk will just be a junk layer we're not working with. But if I need something to demo on, we will work with that. Now, we're going to have to do some reorganization here of the layers and configure them so that they are aligned how we want them to be. Now, when we set this up, the ordering of the layers is pretty much not how I want it to be. We want the shirt on the bottom, so we'll do that. I want the left arm to be on the left side, and I want the left sleeve, and the right arm to be on the right side. So if we move these over, organize them horizontally, that just makes it a little bit easier to set everything up. So we will be moving all those connections and reorient them. Now, as we do this, the way we want it structured is we want to have the hand on top. That's part of why we didn't set up the hand with, and then we can put the sleeve on top of the rest of the arm. But we didn't finish drawing around the hand because we wanted the hand on top as we worked with it. Now, you will notice as we start structuring this, it does tend to, we have a lot of layers going on, and it's going to be really kind of messy as we work our way through. And this is where using additional composites is going to make our life a lot nicer. Now, all these things, I could start dragging them around and trying to move them. I find it's easier just eliminate them. And we'll see, hey, look, they went away. Oh no, doesn't matter. And I need another composite. Now, what I could do is I could copy paste that composite. I can also just hit return or enter on the keyboard and type in composite, and it's there. Inside my layers, we'll also see under timeline we have node library. If I go to my node library, we have different nodes we can choose. Under favorites, there of course is composite, but I find it's just easier to put them in. Now it automatically, sometimes will, when you add something, it'll like add it to a connection line here, and you're like, no, I don't want that. So to get it out, if you hold down Alt or Option, it brings it out. Hold it, you can snap things back in. So I want a composite for each arm. So I have my arm composites that I'm working with. Now I could take those composites and connect those to my primary composite. And if I want, I can start adding these parts back in. Another thing that we will have to do as part of this is we will need to add in some pegs onto our different parts. So a quick and easy way is select, actually I can just select all of those, and Command Shift P or Control Shift P will add a peg to each of the items. Remember, when we are creating a simple arm-like structure, then we need an additional peg. Now if I select just any peg and Command or Control P, it adds a peg to that. That's going to be the peg for the lower arm. And then we want a peg for the whole arm, so I can do that as well. It's a good idea to always connect things together. Now if I want the arm to move, if I want the sleeve to always be rotating with the arm, I could probably attach the sleeve into that grouping as well. So again, to repeat, lower arm, we select that, upper arm, we select that, and we will connect that to the lower arm and the sleeve. So that is the master for the whole arm. Then we have the shirt. We'll put that over here. And right, nothing is selected. Command or Control P gives me a peg. This is going to be the master peg for the whole, kind of, in this case, kind of upper body or arm torso, because I don't have any other body parts. You can use our advanced animation tool to set some of our pivot points. I can zoom in a little bit here so we can see. So master peg, I'll just put it kind of around the belly button. Shirt, yeah, probably, yeah, similar spot. Now if I go to the sleeve, because if we set the hand here, then we can see it's showing us which item. It changed color. So if I set the hand, it moves at the wrist, lower arm, and so if I command or control click, or if I click and drag and select, I can select both of those points. So I will set the lower arm and the elbow pivot point at the same time, so they're in the same location. That's part of why we structure them this way. So now the upper arm and our master peg, and I want to add sleeve to it, so if I hold down command or control and click, that selects that as well, and I will put that in at the shoulder. So we'll repeat that process on the other arm. So I can select the sleeve, upper arm, and our master. Set that pivot point, and just drag select to set the elbow pivot point, and finally click, and realize I need to connect the hand to that. So at this point, all of my pivot points have been set. If I were to use my animation tool and click, select that, we can see it's moving probably looks like I need to adjust my artwork, or in this case, I think I'm going to move that pivot point down a little bit, because when I moved it, we can see, yeah, ideally I probably need to clean up my artwork and make those joints a little bit more rounded. If they're perfectly circular, then when you move, you don't get any weird kind of bending sticking out. So that one won't really, so when we move the whole arm, we'll be using the upper arm peg, then we'll be using the elbow peg, move the hand. And if we needed to, if we wanted to put a little wave in the sleeve, then we could always click on the sleeve and get the sleeve to move a little bit on the arm as part of a secondary action, as part of our animation. Go to the right arm. What we really are going to care about more is the elbow, because we're not dealing too much with the shoulder joint just yet. So I hit B because I clicked on the lower arm. Hit B, we notice how it goes up to then the lower arm master, and we can see the elbow moves. Okay. So at this point, our character is rigged, and it's ready for us to start working with the Autopatch. One thing I want to do is I want to clean up my joint here a little bit. So that's in my lower right arm. I'm going to click into my drawing mode, and when I'm in drawing, I can see it's there. And if I click on the light bulb, it allows me to, it's like light box when we're doing our animation mode. I'm going to use the white selection arrow, which is our contour editor. And when I click on my path, I can see what I want to do. So I want to just adjust a few of these points here, because I'm not getting quite the shape or movement that I'm looking for. Ideally, I was trying to be quick when I developed this, but I should have drawn circles and made both ends of the joint an actual circle. That would have allowed me to have a little cleaner line when it animates. But the real reason we're watching this is we want to learn about using the Autopatch. And what we can do with the Autopatch, so I can see, I forgot one thing is, if you modify your line art, then what I probably need to do, not probably, but exactly what I need to do is I need to select what I have done, and now go back to line art here, and once again copy my line art to my color. So I deleted what was there before. I've now pasted it down. Let's just click over to color, grab skin, grab a paint bucket, fill it, Okay, now we can go back into our nodes. So we're looking to add the Autopatch, and what the Autopatch will do is it will say, hey, where the outline is the same color, when we have overlapping sections, we'll make that outline go away so we have continuous color. We can access our nodes through the node library. So if I look in the node library, I will see I have access to all these different nodes. So we have combines and 3Ds. There's a lot of things I use under favorites, and you can customize your favorites. Composite we use, cutter we will be using. We have our different art layers. Filters where we'll see our different art layers, where we can get our overlay and our underlay, our line art, our color art, all of that. But I find trying to find things, I can search for it here and choose it off the list, but just as easily while I am working, what I can do when I'm looking for something is just when the node window is active, if I hit return or enter, I type what I'm looking for. In this case, it's Autopatch. So that would be in the isolate group of things. Now we need one Autopatch here, and I'll just copy paste that to have a second one over here. One word about copy pasting. Copy pasting non-drawing layer nodes, totally fine. Copy pasting pegs, that's fine too. A peg is just a peg, and then you just have to change its information. Now if that peg actually has data associated with it, you've positioned, that's bad, but getting a peg really is as easy as just Command or Control P. I recommend using that, or Command or Control Shift P if you're attaching it to a drawing layer. Now when we have a node and want to insert it into something, if we hold down Alt or Option and drag, we'll see how it automatically connects. So it can connect in. And if I hold it down and drag it out, it disconnects it. That's really part of the magic trick. So Autopatch requires us to make a sandwich. And we sandwich the element that we're trying to patch. So I take the upper arm, I drag into Autopatch, and I'm going to drag now a connection from this Autopatch to the composite. When I do that, I didn't see anything happen because it was on that arm over there. So you can see now that joint has cleaned itself up. Let's repeat the process over here. So we take the right arm, drag it to the Autopatch, drag the Autopatch so it sandwiches the lower arm connection, and you can see how it now eliminated that line as well. If I move the lower arm, we can see how we get decent movement happening there. Try the same thing here. We can bend. That looks good. That looks good. I'm pretty happy with having cleaned it up. I think we're getting a much better look and shape to that arm. So that's good. What I'd like to do is add a crease in for the elbow, similar to what we have at the wrist. And there's a pretty cool way that we can go about doing that. So what we do is I'm going to take on the lower arm here. I'm going to click on that. What I want to do is switch over to my drawing. Just click again. Oh, not an overlay. So if we're looking at color, we can see there is the color. I'm going to go to the line art. If I select the line art using my select tool, I'm going to copy that, click on overlay, paste. Now what we want to do is erase a little bit, as we will be endeavoring to leave the creases for wrist and elbow. If I zoom in a little bit, we'll see how these are squared off. And if I don't want that, if I don't want these squared off, under my pencil options, we can choose how we want our endpoints to be, rounded or flat. Currently, the starting end of the pencil line is flat, the ending is flat. If I switch it to round, we'll see that the start of that went round. And if I go down here, we'll see the start of that went round because it was drawn using a counterclockwise motion. Now if I select both of these again and go into my pencil editor, if I go here and choose end, once again now the end is there. But what we want to see happen is we want to adjust now the contours at the end so it tapers in. And to achieve that taper, under our contour editor, we have an option for pencil editor. And when I choose that, I'm going to zoom in here so we can see. And I can see now I can adjust how that line tapers. So if I select this point right here, I can taper this in. As I taper it in, you'll see how that line is tapering. I don't want to taper all the way. Now I'm tapering only one side of it. I'm leaving the interior edge the same so it will line up. It's the exterior edge I'm tapering. And we'll see how that works here in a moment. So I can pull that edge in so we get a nice little taper. Let's go down. And we haven't erased down here. Oh, I did a little bit of undo because when my mouse scrolled over my pencil size while I was working with it, I accidentally changed the thickness of my line. So let's make both of these round. Then with the contour editor, pull it in. Oh, I pulled the wrong ones. Pull the outside edge, not the inside edge. Do as I said previously, not as what I just did now. Just gonna shorten that so it's not quite as long and tapered. Okay. And if we want to see how that looks, turn on all the layers, we'll see that, oh look, I can't see anything because these lines are inside. They're inside the existing line art because each drawing layer has overlay, line art, color art, and underlay artwork available to it. Now if I go grab my overlay and want to put this in, one quick word on copy pasting. We can copy paste nodes like this that don't have any real data to them. I open it up and look, there's no real options here. It's not a drawing layer. Drawing layers, if we copy paste them, it makes a clone that is a second version of the exact same thing. So if I change the artwork in one of the drawing layers, it will affect the other one. So it's not creating a unique duplicate, it's cloning it. If we want to copy paste an art layer, when I select it, go under my menu in the node window, and I can then, well, first copy it, and actually not under that, we can just right click. We're looking for paste special. When I choose paste special, I need to choose create new columns. If you check that box, then when I paste it in, it creates a unique drawing layer, not a cloned duplicate that will be affected by its original. So just keep that in mind. Let's go back into the camera view here so we can see it. And I'm going to grab my animation tool, select that, go here, let's bend the arm. So we can see that there is no crease happening yet at the elbow. It's just a sharp corner. But if I add this overlay layer to my composite, we'll see how we get that nice line. Now this is why, remembering that this line is cutting on the middle, so if you don't want to have it taper like that, where if that were to bother you, seeing that kind of changes thicker here and suddenly it's thinner, you need to be a little more careful while you're modifying the contour of that. So if I grab this left lower arm, go into my contour editor, click on it. In this view here, I could modify that contour a little bit more and pull it up so it looks more continuous. So that would be a fix that we could do, and now that lines it up. But what's really nice about this is, so we get a crease when the arm goes this way, But if the arm goes the other way, so we're rotating the other way, we can see we get a crease. So we may need to reposition ever so slightly the arm here. And I'm doing all of this still, when you're setting up your artwork and working on getting things working, I'm doing everything in frame one. So I am finalizing how I want my joints to work and behave in frame one. So now I'm much happier with how that elbow is bending. So if I repeat that with the right arm, let's go repeat that process. So we'll zoom in a little bit here. Right lower arm, select that. Let's go to the line art layer, go into drawing. Shift M resets our view as always, and now I can pull up my artwork, move it around a little bit with the line art. Select it, copy it, go to overlay, paste it in. So now we have, it's on the line art overlay, there's our color. So let's go into overlay here, and we are erasing essentially at the point where it starts to curve. Just going to work on the elbow right now in this particular example. Select both of these, scroll down, start, end, so they're both round. Grab my pencil editor, let's zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. Leave the inside consistent, push, outside edge over, push, outside edge over. Go back to our camera view. Okay, everything is good. Now pull up our overlay. Now with the overlay there, so again, it's hit return or enter on the keyboard, type in what you're looking for. Grab the lower arm. Now let's go stick that overlay in. And we have it here. Notice that difference. There's a little bit of the overlay showing right now because of where I cut it. So we might need to trim it a little bit, or let's see if this works. Grab the animation tool. Let's move that lower arm and see what we get. So we can see how we're getting that crease happening there. And same thing on the other one where I don't know if I really like that little joint. So that is modifiable with the contour editor. So select this, click this point. Just move things around so I have a little bit more room. Wow, that is a long handle. I'm just trying to maintain my outside edge so there's consistency, so I don't want it to balloon out. I'm trying to keep it so it stays in, but then fattens up a little bit more there, so that's a little better seam. I can live with that little gap. We're not really going to notice it. Let's try and go the other way. Well, it's one too many B's. We can see how it puts that crease in here. And once again, let's work with that pencil editor. This one's not as long. And I'm trying to line that line up, but I don't want it to exceed. Don't want it to get fat like that because that's kind of ugly. Because the arm shouldn't fatten. Needs to stay inside but get as close as we can to create a continuous line right there. That's much better. So if we zoom out, zoom in a little bit, we don't need to see all of it. Grab our animation tool. So we're getting that elbow crease moving in both directions with that arm. And getting the elbow crease, moving in both directions with this arm. So with that, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out as a simple version of working with the Autopatch.